Mr. Speaker, I refer the House to my register of interest. Yesterday, in the other place, there was a debate on the Middle East. My noble friend, the Lord Polak, made a typically interesting contribution. He pointed out that in 1948, there were 726,000 Palestinian refugees and 856,000 Jewish refugees living in Arab lands. Yet since then, the UN's focus has been solely on the Palestinians. He pointed to the 170 resolutions, the 13 UN agencies created or mandated to look after the Palestinian issue, and the billions of dollars that have been provided to the Palestinians. Yet he still hoped that the UK will do all it can to bring Israelis and Palestinians around the table to hammer out a solution, and I agree with him. Israel remains committed to an independent Palestinian state through direct negotiations to, amongst other things, end the conflict. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has repeatedly underlined his commitment to restarting peace negotiations without preconditions. And Israel has accepted the principle of a future Palestinian state being based along 1967 lines and for land swaps to take place. Polling in 2016 has shown that there is still an appetite for a two-state solution amongst both Palestinians and Israelis. The figures were almost 60% for Israelis and just over 50% for Palestinians. But the biggest obstacle to peace involved the infighting between Hamas and Fatah, the Palestinian approach to unilaterally wanting statehood, and the rearmament in Gaza by Hamas. Personally, I would add to this the seemingly blinkered approach of the PLO. When I was last in Ramallah, I visited the PLO and had talks with them. I found that there was little basis on which to have those talks. There was an attempt to blame us for all the ills of the region and a dislike for the involvement of anything that smacked of the private sector. But I would also like to stress the levels of cooperation that already exist between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and point to one organisation in particular, Save a Child's Heart, which I have been to see on a number of different occasions and does fantastic work. Now, of course, I would be the first to admit that settlement expansion is counterproductive, and I have made that point to the Israeli government. But the settlement issue is not a permanent obstacle to peace, and it's one of the 5 final status issues. They are not the reason for the continuation of the conflict, as violence predates the settlements, and the majority of settlers live within established settlement blocks along the Green Line, which are widely anticipated to become part of Israel as part of the peace settlement. The past 2 years have shown the rising level of terror and Palestinian incitement in Israel. Since 2015 alone, there have been around 180 stabbings, 150 shootings, 58 car ramming attacks and 1 bus bombing. The result has been over 389 terror attacks and over 759 injuries and some 50 Israeli or foreign deaths. The violence escalated to the point that in October 2015, an Israeli mother and father were gunned down in front of their 4 young children. And I think in this, the sort of attitude that we have seen from President Abbas, where he has vowed to Palestinians that he'd never stop prisoner salaries, even if he had to resign, despite telling the US that he would do this, is not very helpful and shows the lack of... I won't actually, I'm fairly close to the end of it. No peace agreement will be able to guarantee peace in the medium to long term if a generation of Palestinians are growing up indoctrinated to hate Israel and the Jews. And the Palestinian Authority's failure to deliver on its commitment to end incitement and hate education explicitly undermines the principles and conditions on which the peace process is built. Although I welcome France's recent efforts to promote peace, I do not think the best way to make progress is to hold an international conference without the attendance of the 2 main parties, and we have to get the 2 main parties round the table at the same time. Thank you.